I had promised myself that this year would be different. The air buzzed with excitement as our small town geared up for the annual summer parade, a tradition that had brought neighbors together for decades. Bright banners fluttered along Main Street, shop windows gleamed with cheerful displays, and children rehearsed their routines in school gyms and backyards. For most, it was a carefree celebration, but for my daughter Emily, it meant something deeper, an opportunity to simply belong. Emily was born with a rare genetic condition that affected her mobility and appearance. Life hadn't been easy for her. Stares, whispers, awkward silences, they had shadowed too many of our days. Yet through it all, she carried herself with a grace I often envied. At 9 years old, she had a smile that could light up a room and a spirit that refused to be dimmed. This year, Emily had been counting down the days to the parade with the kind of joy only a child can muster. We'd spent weeks decorating her wheelchair with shimmering streamers and paper flowers. She wanted to ride alongside her classmates in the Stars of Tomorrow float, a bright, noisy celebration of the town's children. I could see how much it meant to her. After all the struggles, here was a chance to be part of something joyful and public. As the morning sun poured through our kitchen window, Emily's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Do you think people will like my chair?" she asked, smoothing out a strand of gold ribbon. "They'll love it," I said, brushing a tear away before she could see. I wanted this day to be perfect for her. At that moment, I didn't know what storm was quietly brewing on the other side of town, or that one person would soon try to ruin everything, someone who had no idea just who I really was. Emily came into this world fighting for every breath. The doctors had warned me early on that her condition, Treacher-Collins syndrome, would bring challenges, more than most could imagine. She was born with underdeveloped facial bones and a malformed jaw, which made feeding and breathing a struggle in those first fragile months. Surgeries followed, one after another, each leaving tiny, pale scars along her cheeks and chin, though to me they were marks of her strength. As she grew older, life remained an uphill climb. She needed a wheelchair by the time she was 5, her joints too fragile to support her slender frame for long distances. Speech therapy helped her find her voice, though the words sometimes emerged soft and slow. Still, there was never any hesitation in her laughter or her determination. Where others saw difference, Emily saw possibility. She loved books, animals, and especially music. She had a habit of tapping her fingers to invisible rhythms, her own secret song playing in her mind. At home, I would often find her spinning in her chair to her favorite tunes, arms open wide as if ready to take flight. Her teachers spoke of her kindness, her classmates of her courage, and yet beyond our close-knit circle, the world could be cruel. I remember one day in particular when we visited the park. A mother tugged her child away as we approached, murmuring something about how she looked. Emily's face fell for a moment, but then she wheeled herself forward, chin high, as if daring the world to see her for who she truly was. Moments like that tore at my heart, yet they also showed me the depth of her spirit. She was braver than most adults I knew. The parade was more than a fun event for Emily. It was her way of saying, "I'm here. I belong." For weeks she'd talked about the costumes, the floats, the music. She dreamed of waving to the crowd, surrounded by friends who accepted her without question. I watched her light up with every plan she made, her excitement infectious. And though a small voice in me whispered caution, I had seen too many unkind glances. I refused to let fear steal this moment from her. We were ready, or so I thought. The week before the parade was a whirlwind of color and creativity. Emily insisted on handling every detail of her float decorations, her fingers working tirelessly with ribbons, stickers, and glitter glue. I had never seen her more animated. The living room floor became a sea of craft supplies, a joyful mess that mirrored the anticipation building in our home. Each evening after dinner, we'd wheel her chair onto the porch to test out new additions. A strand of fairy lights here, a cascade of silk flowers there. Emily had chosen a theme: shooting stars. She wanted her chair to shimmer like the night sky. We spray-painted cardboard stars in silver and gold, then fastened them to the wheels and seat with careful precision. By the time we finished, her chair sparkled with every movement. "You'll be the brightest star in the whole parade," I told her, and she grinned so wide it made my heart ache with love. Word had spread among the neighborhood kids that Emily would be riding with the Stars of Tomorrow float. Several of her classmates had stopped by during the week to help decorate and rehearse their group routine. For the first time in a long time, Emily was at the center of something joyful and inclusive. She giggled with her friends, trading costume ideas and practicing the parade waves they had perfected. The community itself seemed caught in the usual pre-parade excitement. Bunting draped the storefronts along Main Street. Local artisans hung their work in windows. The bakery rolled out trays of star-shaped cookies, and the school marching band rehearsed on the green each afternoon. It was a beloved tradition, one that had always brought a sense of unity to the town. I should have noticed the small undercurrents of unease. A few glances here, a murmured comment there, but I was too focused on Emily's joy to pay them much mind. The night before the parade, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "This is going to be the best day ever, isn't it, Mom?" I kissed her forehead and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. It will be." I wanted to believe it with all my heart, but not everyone shared that hope. The first time Karen confronted me about Emily was the morning before the parade, under a cloudless sky that seemed too perfect for what was about to unfold. I was standing by our driveway, adjusting a set of small LED lights we had woven into Emily's wheelchair, when her sharp voice cut through the gentle hum of preparations. "Well, good morning," she said, arms crossed, lips tight in a strained smile. "I see you're very involved this year." Karen lived 3 houses down and had always carried herself with the air of someone who believed the neighborhood should revolve around her vision of perfection. She ran the garden club with an iron fist, chaired every PTA meeting she could insert herself into, and curated her public image as though she were auditioning for a lifestyle magazine. Her blonde bob was always immaculate, her outfits pressed to perfection. But beneath the polished surface lurked a brittle sort of cruelty that few dared challenge. "Good morning," I replied, trying to remain neutral. Her gaze flicked to Emily's chair, now gleaming with stars and ribbons. Her smile faltered. "You're planning for her to be in the parade?" The tone was light, but the undercurrent was unmistakable. "Yes," I said, voice firm. "She'll be part of the Stars of Tomorrow float." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Oh, I see. It's just—" She trailed off, pretending to search for the right words, though I knew she'd already chosen them. "Some of us were thinking this year's parade should really showcase the best face of our community. We have guests coming in from out of town, media coverage even. I'm sure you understand." I felt my stomach tighten. "My daughter is the best face of this community," I said, my voice cool. Karen tilted her head, her smile returning, thinner this time. Of course, she cooed. "But some people they might be uncomfortable. You know how sensitive these events can be. It would be such a shame if the tone of the parade were disrupted." Emily, oblivious to the adult tension in the air, rolled out beside me at that moment, beaming. "Mom, can we add more stars to the back?" Karen's expression twitched. She glanced at my daughter with something between pity and disdain, then back to me. "Just think about what's best for everyone," she whispered, before walking away, heels clicking sharply on the pavement. I stood frozen, fury simmering beneath my skin. There it was, laid bare. Beneath the pretense of community spirit, Karen had deemed my child unworthy of being seen, unworthy of joy, unworthy of the simple right to participate. I looked down at Emily, who was busy inspecting her decorations, blissfully unaware of the venom behind those saccharine words. I forced a smile. "Let's add those stars, sweetheart. You'll be the brightest one there." But inside, a storm had begun to brew. That evening, as twilight softened the streets and the neighborhood buzzed with final parade preparations, I received a quiet knock at the door. It was Margaret, one of the parade committee members and a longtime friend. She looked uneasy, eyes darting over her shoulder before stepping inside. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, lowering her voice. "It's about Karen." My stomach dropped. I motioned her to the kitchen, where Emily couldn't overhear us. Margaret unfolded a stack of printed emails and handed them to me. The words on the page burned with polite venom. Karen had launched a full campaign to have Emily excluded. In her emails to the committee, she spoke of community image, parade standards, and maintaining a positive public perception. She called my daughter's presence a potential distraction and hinted that it might upset younger children or offend visiting dignitaries. The most galling line read, "We must consider whether featuring certain individuals aligns with the spirit of celebration this parade represents." Margaret's hands trembled. I tried to argue with her, but a few others, people she influences, they started to agree. They're worried about causing a scene. A bitter laugh escaped me. The only scene will be if they dare to keep my daughter out. Margaret reached across the table. I thought you should know. The committee meets early tomorrow, right before the parade starts. She's pushing for a last-minute removal from the participant list. The words hung in the air like smoke. I clenched the papers, feeling a cold fury settle into my bones. After everything Emily had endured, after all her joy and anticipation, this woman was trying to erase her. Quietly, surgically, with a smile. And the worst part was, she thought she could. That night, after tucking Emily into bed with promises of the magical morning ahead, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the string of emails. The urge to scream was overwhelming, but I knew anger alone wouldn't win this battle. Karen had built her little empire on charm and whispered influence. I had something far stronger. She didn't know who she was really dealing with. I stood, shoulders squared, and began drafting my own message to the committee. My signature would remind them all that I wasn't just Emily's parent. I was also the mayor of this town, and tomorrow I intended to act like it. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with 1,000 questions and a single aching truth. I had to decide whether to fight this battle or quietly withdraw to spare Emily the pain. The thought of her seeing me confront Karen, hearing the ugly words that might be said, filled me with dread. She'd faced enough cruelty in her young life. Could I risk her joy tomorrow for the sake of making a stand? But then another thought crept in. What message would I send her if I backed down? If I let one woman's prejudice dictate her place in this town? Emily had spent her whole life learning to hold her head high in the face of judgment. I couldn't let her see me shrink now. Still, doubt gnawed at me. Would my position as mayor be seen as an abuse of power if I intervened too forcefully? Would the community side with Karen's sugar-coated excuses? The political ramifications mattered little compared to what was at stake for my daughter, but they whispered at the edges of my conscience. As dawn neared, I slipped into Emily's room. She was sound asleep, her small frame relaxed in the soft glow of her nightlight. One hand rested on her chest, the other curled around a stuffed bear missing one eye. Watching her, my heart clenched with both love and fear. She had no idea of the storm swirling around her moment of happiness, no idea that the simple joy of riding in a parade had become a battlefield. A soft voice broke the silence. "Mom?" Her eyes fluttered open. "Are you okay?" I knelt beside her and brushed a stray hair from her face. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking." She smiled sleepily. "Tomorrow's going to be the best day ever, right?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and kissed her forehead. "Yes, it is." In that moment, my resolve hardened. No matter the cost, no matter the confrontation to come, I would not let anyone take this day from her. I would not let Karen win. The morning of the parade dawned bright and clear, the kind of summer day that seemed tailor-made for celebration. I could hear the hum of early activity drifting through the open windows, vendors setting up booths, the band warming up in the distance, neighbors greeting one another with cheerful anticipation. I dressed quickly, a practiced calm over my features, though my stomach twisted with nerves. I knew what lay ahead. Emily was already awake, her face glowing with excitement as I entered her room. She wore a simple white dress we had carefully chosen, trimmed with silver stars to match her chair. Her hair was pulled back with a sparkling headband, a final touch to complete her look. "You ready to shine?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She grinned and nodded. ready. As we made our way to Main Street, I spotted members of the parade committee gathering near the staging area. Karen stood at the center of them, clipboard in hand, her mouth moving in tight, purposeful words. A few committee members shifted uncomfortably, glancing in my direction as I approached. Margaret caught my eye and gave a small nod of encouragement. I positioned Emily near her float group and told her to stay with her friends for a moment. Then I turned and walked straight toward Karen. "Good morning, Karen," I said evenly. She looked up, her eyes flickering with something close to triumph. "Mayor," she replied smoothly. "We were just finalizing the lineup." I held her gaze. "I understand there's been some discussion about my daughter's participation." Karen's smile didn't falter, but her tone tightened. "Several committee members have expressed concerns. We want the parade to be a positive experience for everyone, and certain visual elements could be challenging." I felt the weight of every parent's fight for their child press down on me, but I stood firm. Emily is part of this community. She has every right to be here. If anyone finds her presence challenging, that says more about them than it does about her. Karen's smile thinned. "Of course, but as mayor, surely you understand the importance of presenting the town in the best possible light." I let a beat of silence stretch between us, then spoke clearly, my voice carrying. "As mayor, I understand my responsibility to protect the dignity and inclusion of every resident, and as Emily's mother, I will not allow her to be excluded based on prejudice." Around us, other parents and spectators had begun to gather, drawn by the tension in the air. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen's confident posture faltered for the first time. "You're making a scene," she hissed quietly. I straightened. "You've already made one. Now everyone can see it." Without another word, I turned and walked back to Emily, kneeling beside her. "You ready, Starshine?" She beamed and gave me a thumbs up. As the parade began, Emily rolled forward with her float group, her chair gleaming beneath the sun. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. I stood on the sidelines, tears threatening, as I watched my daughter shine brighter than any star that day. And Karen? She stood frozen at the curb, her clipboard hanging useless in her hand, the tide of public support sweeping past her. She had no idea that in trying to dim one light, she had only made it burn stronger. The parade rolled on in a blur of color and music, but my focus remained fixed on Emily. She waved enthusiastically from her decorated chair, her eyes wide with wonder as the crowd responded with cheers and clapping. Strangers called out encouragements, children pointed excitedly, and neighbors leaned in to offer smiles and waves. It was as if the town itself had decided in that moment to wrap her in a blanket of acceptance. I followed the procession at a distance, unable to suppress the tears that welled up as I witnessed my daughter living her dream, unburdened by the ugliness that had threatened to silence her joy. The contrast between her radiant happiness and the bitterness on Karen's face was stark. The community had spoken without a word, and Karen stood alone, her influence slipping away with every passing float. After the parade concluded, the town gathered in the park for the traditional post-parade picnic. I found myself approached by dozens of residents, friends, acquaintances, even strangers, offering words of support and admiration. Many had witnessed the confrontation and were appalled by Karen's behavior. One elderly man clasped my hand and said, "You showed real courage today, and so did your daughter. This town needed that." Margaret found me amid the crowd, her face alight with relief. "You did the right thing," she said. "Everyone saw the truth today." Word spread quickly through the community. By the following week, the parade committee issued a formal apology, reaffirming its commitment to inclusivity. Karen, once the self-appointed guardian of the town's image, faced a swift erosion of her influence. Several committee members resigned in protest of her actions, and the PTA quietly distanced itself from her leadership. As for Emily, she became something of a local hero. Her classmates treated her with newfound respect, and even those who had once stared in curiosity now greeted her with warmth. She seemed to sense the shift, her confidence blossoming in the days that followed. At home, she spoke of the parade with shining eyes. "Mom, did you see how many people were clapping for me?" "I saw, sweetheart," I said, pulling her close. "They weren't just clapping for your float, they were clapping for you. She smiled against my shoulder, her voice soft. It was the best day ever. And in that moment, I knew without doubt that standing up had been worth it. No child should ever be made to feel invisible, and no parent should ever have to fight for their child's right to simply be seen. We had faced prejudice and met it with light, and in doing so, we had changed something in our town, perhaps forever. In the days that followed, as life settled back into its usual rhythm, I found myself reflecting often on what had transpired. It was tempting to see the parade as a single, triumphant moment, a line drawn in the sand where justice had prevailed. But beneath that victory, I knew there was a deeper current running through our town and through so many others. Prejudice doesn't always wear a hateful face. Sometimes it smiles politely, masks itself in concern, and whispers about what is appropriate or pleasant to see. That's what made Karen's words so dangerous. They weren't shouted from a podium, they were slipped quietly into conversations, designed to exclude without appearing cruel. I thought about the privilege I carried, not only as Emily's parent, but as the mayor. I had a platform, a voice people listened to. Most parents in my position would not have had the same power to push back. That truth weighed heavily on me. If we wanted a truly inclusive community, it could not depend on titles or influence. It had to start with a collective willingness to confront bias wherever it appeared, no matter how small. Emily, in her beautiful innocence, had taught me more about courage than any political mentor ever could. She faced each day with a heart wide open, offering kindness even to those who looked away. I realized that standing up for her wasn't just about protecting my child. It was about honoring that bravery and ensuring that no one else would have to fight the same battle alone. When I tucked her into bed that night, her head nestled against her pillow, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mum, will I get to be in the parade next year too?" I smiled through a tight throat. "Of course, sweetheart. Every year. For as long as you want."
Because that was the promise I had made, not just to her, but to every child who deserved to be seen and celebrated for who they are. And as long as I had a voice in this town, that promise would stand.
The parade was over, but the work had only begun.